Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and this is a review of Star Trek Prodigy, I think 16? Probably 16. They keep saying progeny in this story. It's probably originally supposed to be called Star Trek Progeny, but yeah, and in this one, the crew is repairing the proto-engine thing, and they each have a story about how they started out. We do the Tunguska Voyager episode. We do the other wrestling Voyager episode. There's two of them there. Classic Trek one. We've got the Rock Tog as a monster creature, which is working with this older, like, thespian sort of knight guy, and they're like staging fake fights of the two of them until they discover that they're which is messed up because she's like the equivalent of a child, so it's kind of screwed up that he's like, this rock creature is like not an adult. The actress isn't an adult even in the story, which is odd as well. I think she's like 11. But yeah, the but sure, the I wonder whether they imagine the pay rate for an actual child actor in the show is probably different from those of the other cast members that are older. The Jacob Pog character, the actor, is quite a bit older than they are. Yeah, so it's just odd. But yes, Dahl and the other are in their early 20s, I think. It's odd. Anyway, Janeway's in her late 60s, so the stories you have you have this weird wrestling thing goes wrong, and then they decide to go off and she decides to make it a comedy, and it throws off the grift they're doing. So he ends up leaving, and they end up departing and stuff. I don't think he dies though. I think he just departs. But yeah, I'm assuming he dies because he was old in the story. The guy, but that's screwed up. That's like a weird sort of like exploitation thing. It seems to be a common theme in the story. Exploited teenage children, and in the current story, you have Janeway looking over the bounty that's been sent out by the diviner. Oops. She apparently got hold of the bounty for the children of the ship, and is reading it, and is like, well, she's clearly Starfleet and clearly adult, clearly very intelligent, so she figures everything out based on this bounty thing. The diviner's name is on it and his face, and everything. It takes them a while to figure this out, but yeah, in the ensign lady, who's actually one of the diviner people. She's not a future version of the daughter. She's some other diviner person. Explains the backstory of how that happened. But first, we're gonna have thrown in there the Medusan being trapped by humanoids and taken away. Humanoids wearing the Spock visors from the original series, which were kind of silly. But yes, and putting them in boxes. So I wonder if they count as a sentient species. So, I mean, they clearly are sentient, like clouds. So are they? Technically, do they have warp drive? If someone else has to come and pick them up, are they technically not an advanced enough species to have warp drive? Yeah, they apparently make ships and stuff and make things work. But how? How do they do that without manipulators? In the story, they give her like a exosuit. Her, him, it, an exosuit. She's actually transgendered. She's a them, basically, in the story. It's a guy that's playing her though. Anyway, so then you have the Zero is the name. There will be a version of Zero in Starship Locations. We'll see Zero a few years later. So. I'm putting her in there. Anyway, so anyway, I want to go on to this one. The other one was, well, we know that Daj is a failed genetic experiment from 100 years earlier, or more than 100 years earlier, on Enterprise, 200 years earlier, which doesn't make sense. They probably should have said Noonien Soong. That would have made more sense. It's like, oh, he's Data's father that did it. But I guess they didn't want to do that. They had sort of the Tom Paris Nick Locarno thing, and Nick Locarno technically wasn't redeemable, so we'll make him Tom Paris, even though it's the same actor. Or it's like I changed that and made it so he's redeemed. So the ensign. Who was the other guy? Oh, Jacob Pog was on a sleeper ship, Tellarite sleeper ship, and he had to fix the sleeper ship. It woke him up, like in Passengers, that cheesy movie with Passengers. He didn't think to wake up any of the other crewmen. No. Apparently he couldn't. The robot AI thing was floating around was apparently incompetent. Didn't want to wake up anyone else. So he fixes all things in the ship, but the oxygen runs out. And it's bizarre. It's just, well, if there's only a few of 29 instead of 30 people on the ship, then there's enough oxygen for them. That's not the case. The oxygen replicators would still run out. So, yeah. He would still be dead. The crew would still be dead. This other ship rescues his pod, though. So why couldn't this other ship have rescued the ship, the other people as well? This other ship showed up. But, okay, this thing could have happened, that thing could have happened. It's left in the air, open. The weirdest thing is the explanation for the time warp, time travel anomaly thing. That somehow 20 years earlier is all this other stuff is happening. The time-space anomaly. So the Protostar apparently hit a space-time anomaly on its way to in the current time period. So in the 2380s, the Chakotay and the crew left 3 years earlier than this story. So 2380 is when they left. So that's pretty quick. So they left in 2380. And they headed out there, and they hit an anomaly near a planet. The planet of the Diviner's planet. They give it a name. And they didn't so much make first contact as they sort of crashed there. So, they sort of retconned what they were. Well, we're figuring that Diviner is an unreliable narrator. He just doesn't know. So it wasn't first contact because Starfleet had been there before in a ship that looked a lot like the Prometheus. That's the outside of the hull is. The Romulans took that ship, the Prometheus. So are they on the Romulan border of the others of the Delta Quadrant right there? Seems that they are. So they're on the Romulan border, which means in another timeline they're actually not destroyed. The planet actually survived, and they're there. They go into the time warp thing, and they decide that I guess Prometheus only encountered them like 10 years earlier, though. The Prometheus-looking ship, roughly. So it leads to the disastrous first contact in the Civil War. Well, because most of the Prometheus crew were, if that's supposed to be the Prometheus, I don't know, I'm guessing, were killed, and the Doctor was the only one on the ship on Voyager later, in the 2370s. Then the it's all out there. They have the Protostar and the weapon, which they built to fight the Civil War that was going on the planet. So the aliens, Diviner's people, built this weapon, put it on the ship that they captured on their planet, and they captured also the Protostar and the Protostar crew. Chakotay and crew then somehow told the AI on the ship to go through the warp, take off. So Chakotay is still in the current time period on the planet that isn't destroyed. It's on the planet, and all of the other people went off into space, into space-time through the anomaly. They sent hundreds of them, one person at a time, through this anomaly, which makes absolutely no sense. Why would they do that? Leading to their own destruction, inevitably. The Protostar had been sent through first, and it ended up 20 years earlier in the 2260s. In the time warp, so anomaly. If it had been red, it would have been a Cillian anomaly, but it was white. So it was a key Draconis anomaly. So it was a sort of a mirror thing. It's probably a mirror thing. So then the girl masquerades as an ensign. The lady masquerades as an ensign. She's not really future girl. She's just from the other timeline, from the other planet. The diviner gets his memories back abruptly, and plans to ambush Janeway. Comes back to his quarters and does so. Knocks her out. But she's already figured it out. She sent security up there. How do these two people hope to, like, it's a Starfleet ship. The other ships, the Protostar is smaller than the Dauntless. The Dauntless seems to be a little bigger than the Voyager. So they've got hundreds of people on the ship and lots of security guards. I would assume the security guards would immediately storm his quarters and arrest him. Because where is he going to go? And there's cameras everywhere, like space starships, right? So wouldn't they already know about all this? It's odd that they just don't communicate in the story. They just don't, because it's supposed to be a kid's show. And a lot of these weird, heavy themes. Like exploiting characters and having them go and trapping characters and having them do things. A lot of heavy themes in Star Trek Prodigy. Yeah, so the weapon thing was on the ship to begin with, sent back into time with the ship. I guess they brought the weapon onto the ship, and then Chakotay and his people made the ship go back in time without him aboard. And I assume Chakotay is still there on that planet. It's decimated. Or the planet isn't decimated. Maybe in this timeline that didn't happen. Or maybe the time warp made the planet go away. Maybe the time warp will hit the Romulan sun and blow it up. And that will start the chain reaction that starts the Romulan end of the Romulan Empire and all that stuff. And tie it in. And maybe the weapon will be activated on the current Protostar and zap the synths into going crazy, thus tying it all into the Abrams universe. If they do that, that would be a little convoluted and silly and a little too clever for them. But I don't think, yeah, it's like, where's he going to go? There's one bad guy. And one other, don't they have any precedent for bad guy spies they have on the ship? Don't they have any, like something gets on a starship and there's hundreds of people on it, maybe 400, 500 or whatever, or in this case 300 maybe. Do they have any protocols for an invader on the ship? I would think they would. But yes, yeah, so there's lots of questions and not enough answers, and this is only 16th episode of 20, so they're gonna have to solve everything in only 3 episodes, roughly the length of a movie. We'll see. But yes, and they better not end it on a cliffhanger like they did halfway through the season, because they shouldn't do that. What if they never get to do a 3rd season? Then they'll be like, oh, shoot, yes, we, yeah. Just, anyway, so, and then I think Star Trek Picard is next after this. But this is only going to go till mid-December. Well, Star Trek Picard, I don't know when that new season starts exactly. But yeah, that alien is anyway, so